My name is Anthony Conlin, Performance and Development Manager here at Valley Rose School in Sunderland, and this is a video to show Marksheets, the basics and hints and tips of Marksheets. Okay, I'm going to open up the test system of Sims, and I'm going to bring up a Marksheet where I'm going to just explain one or two things that you can do with them and things that are useful to remember. So I'm going to go to Focus, Assessment and Marksheet Entry. For this example, I'm going to bring up a Marksheet from the tracking system. It doesn't matter which one because what I'm going to show applies in every Marksheet. So I'm going to bring up a Year 6 Marksheet. Okay, the first thing I always do in all the Marksheets I create, which is similar for everything I do, is click on the narrow button in the middle. And what this does, it just narrows the columns to be able to fit a bit more on your screen. The second thing I like to do is also click the calculate button, because what this will do, it'll calculate any of the calculations on the screen, but quite often I use these blue dividing columns in there which you need to click calculate for them to come up. And what this does is separates out different sections of the Marksheet. Sometimes there's a lot of information in these Marksheets, and this is just a useful way to present it, where each section is in its own little area. Okay, so Marksheets then. The first thing to note is that there are some columns which are grey, and there are columns that are white. The grey ones are generally a previous piece of information or a factor about the child or some kind of calculation, and ones that are read-only that you can't do anything with. The white columns is where you would normally put in some kind of data entry. It might be an assessment or a target or a comment, but it'd be a column where you'll enter information. Okay, so one or two things about the Marksheet before I get into actually entering the data. One thing to note is the result date in the left hand side here. This date here will default to the day you open the Marksheet, and if you were to type in a result, it would be saving it as of that date. However, it is possible to open up a Marksheet and put a date in for a previous time and make the system save it as that date. To do that, you can either just change the date, or you would click on the little button next to it and bring up a calendar, and you can choose whenever you would want that date to be. However, most cases you're not going to really need to do that, and the default of today will be fine. The group membership date is quite important. Again, that will default to today, and most of the time you won't ever need any reason to change it. This date here will looks at the system and gives you the pupils who are here as of that date, so generally you'll need that as today. However, there might be reasons why you want to look back at maybe the group from last year, or if a child left last week you want to have a look back and change the dates of when they were here, or somebody's coming today that you don't want in the list and you can go back a day. So you can change that date, and if you change that date you just need to click the refresh button to refresh the list of children who are relevant there. In terms of entering data into Sims and the tracking system, it's really good in the sense that you can't make any mistakes. You can just type data in. So for example, if I were to type in a result here, I'm just going to type in a 3C and move to the next column. That's fine with no problems. But you can't make any mistakes, so if I were accidentally typed a 3D, it's not going to allow that. It will say 3D is not a valid entry for that cell, and give you the list of the ones that you're allowed to enter. So you can't do anything wrong. Another way of entering information is you can right click on the cell and left click on select grade for cell, and here you're given a list of the grades that you're allowed, and you can actually double click on enter the information that way, and if necessary you could skip and do it like that. So that could be a quicker way of entering information. However, I find typing is just as quick as any other method above. Okay, we're now going to have a look at the summary button, which is one of the most useful buttons on there that everybody always seems to forget about. The summary button here is right in the middle, and what this does is brings on some information for each of the columns. It, funny enough, summarises each of the columns. So when you click it, notice down the bottom here that 4 pieces of information appear. You can turn that on and off. And what this is firstly you get a total of each of the column, a total value, which generally doesn't really mean too much, so don't worry about that one. The number of results can be quite important. This will show you how many results you've got, like a count of results. And this can be useful for when you've got information missing, or some of the data is not quite there. The mean is the most useful one. This is your average. So for example, this column here is your Year 6 Autumn 1 results. This mean here is an average point score in here, so it'll be 19.5 for that column. it can be compared with the next set of results here, which would be 19 in this fake data. And this mean also can be used for some of the columns that I've got in the tracking system, of which there will be further guidance videos available, for things like the milestone, the national, and the target indications, because these values here are actually percentages, because they're an average of ones and zeros. But as I said, there'll be a further guidance video available for that. Okay, so don't forget the summary button, very, very useful in there. Linked to the summary button, what you can also do in terms of your stats and your different groups for your children, if you come over to the left hand side here and above all the children's names, in this box here, if you actually right click up here and then left click on select additional student columns, what this does is brings up you the list of available factors and information for each of the children that's held in Sims that you can choose to bring onto this Marksheet, as much or little of that as you want. So I'm just going to bring a few on now. So if I bring on maybe gender, free school meals, send status, EAL, and percentage attendance, for example. Click OK, and here you'll notice that they have now been put onto the Marksheet and are available for you to look at and use, and in a minute I'll show you how to filter by them. One thing to note is actually, because this is a database as opposed to Excel, you can actually sort these columns without worrying about people going out of order. So for example, I could left click on the gender, and that's it. Now it's sorted it by females and then males underneath in there, and you click it again, it would sort the other way around. You could do things like sort on percentage attendance. That would be low attendance, lowest to highest, or the other way around, highest to lowest. And if you want to get back to straight alphabetical order, you click just back on the students on the left hand side. What's really, really useful with these factors, and in fact you can do this on any of the columns as well, is the filtering and how quick and effective it is. The information that we've got here now is a full group of children in that year group, and the information summarised down here is for everybody. However, you can quite easily on any of these columns come and filter by whatever you want in that column. So for example, if I wanted to see just the boys in this group, I'd come to the gender column, need to look for the little filter or the funnel type button just above it. Click on that and it'll bring up the options from within that cell of what you can filter by. So obviously the options within the gender column are male or female. So if I put a tick into M for male, click OK, it will filter just the boys. You'll notice when I did that, the information down here for the summary actually changed and updated based on what the new filter is. The other thing to note is you get a little description of what filter you currently have selected here. If you want to go back to everybody, you can either undo what you just did, select all, or if I add them back on, you can click on the little cross for the filter selected down here, and that returns it back to as it was and no filter applied. You can also combine these filters, so if I wanted, for example, boys who were not eligible for free school meals, that is that filter just there. So now we can see here it says gender equals male, free school meals equals no, and that's the group of children we've only got selected here, and them stats underneath there all apply just for that group of children. And again, if I want to get rid of that, click on the cross. Filtering is very, very useful because you can do that on any column, even things like attendance. You could filter just on your lowest or highest attendance or a certain range of that. You could filter just on certain key stage 1 results, like if you're only maybe interested in your higher performers, key stage 1, you could just click on them and search for them. And in fact you could even just click and say, well, just give me grades of anyone who's currently on a whatever grade you want, and it'll filter just on that. So really, really useful, really, really good. Okay, a few other things to do with the basics of Marksheets then. The factors that we had selected here are only those available in Sims and the main Sims factors. You might have some kind of intervention within school or something that you want to filter by yourself or create your own group. There'll be a separate video on how to create user-defined groups, but when you've done that, you can use the group filter button from here in this magnifying glass to be able to select what that filter is or turn on and off your own user-defined groups. And this is in the middle here, so if you've created anything it would be in that list. As I said, I'll do a separate video on how you do that, but you could say I only want to include that certain group, or actually I want to exclude this group that I've created, of whatever that may or may not be. And that would update all them figures and only include them user-defined groups. Okay, a few other useful things which generally forgot about and not used too much. Because this is a Sims SQL database in the background, what you can actually do is have the history of all these results. So for example, if I wanted to have a look at not just this result but all the results in this particular aspect, which would be maths, you can right click on that result and say left click on result history, and this now has given me a history of all the previous results over the times. Don't worry about my result date too much, yours will be the correct dates. This is just a test system where I put some data in. But all your dates will be there. You'll have the results, what they were, the dates they went in, how the result was entered, who actually entered the result, and if you actually put any notes on the result. So that can be quite useful. Going back to some of the notes on the results as well, for example, you might want to put in a particular reason why a result is particularly good or particularly poor. You might have maybe a child who's, I don't know, been to Bangladesh for 6 weeks or something and broke a leg or anything like that. You could right click on the result and left click on view and edit note, and then you can actually make a note of whatever that is that you want to describe of why that result particularly good or bad. So could be broken leg, has had 2 months off or something like that. And when you do that, you'll notice that you get a little red triangle in the cell to indicate that there's a comment attached. And if you hover over it, it'll actually tell you what that comment is, and it will stay with that result for all the time. If you would look at the result history of that result, and I haven't saved it, but it would then have a little note to tell you what was said at that time, and you can even have a look back at ones that have been done at a previous time. So that could be quite useful as well. Okay, one or two other little features of the tracking system. You can right click on any column and get a grade distribution, and this doesn't have to necessarily be one of the actual main tracking systems. It can be any column you want. I'll show you for the key stage 1 column. This is the key stage 1 results. If you right click and then left click on show grade distribution, this will bring up a little summary. This is at the moment a percentage of the results, the amount of what the results look like, the distribution. So the majority of children at key stage 1 for this fake data were at a 2B, more than half of them. If you're not interested in the percentages, you want to see the numbers, you can change that to a count. And in there we've now got a count of children who are also there instead. And if you want a nice graph of that, you can just click on the graph and there's a graph generator for you. You can do that on any of the columns, so you could, for example, come in here and do that on the Year 6 Autumn 1 results, or the Autumn 2 results, or the Fisher Family Trust targets, or whatever you want. You can just right click and do that again. Obviously this one's only got 4 results in, so it's not going to look fantastic because they're all different. It's going to show there's one at each, but you get the idea of how that can work and how that can be quite useful. Okay, the final thing for basics of these mark sheets is you'll notice that there's an export button. I wouldn't recommend clicking the print button because you'll probably get lots and lots of pages, and really there's probably no need to print all this information off again and again. However, I do appreciate there might be some times when you do want, or the teachers do want, a certain list of children. The best way to do that, I think, is to use the export button. When you click the export button, you get 2 choices, formatted or unformatted. Unformatted is better if you want to be able to change and manipulate the data. Formatted is better if you want to keep some of the formats and some of the columns and some of the colours. Okay, so for example, if I click on the drop down and click unformatted, what that's going to do now is give me the information but in Excel, where I can now go ahead and actually adjust and change things as I want and format the data. One thing to note though is if you do export any of this to Excel and, for example, wanting to make a change to one of the assessments, obviously just by changing this in Excel it won't change it back in the tracking system, so please be aware. Okay, so in terms of the main tracking system and how this works, some of the features in here, that's it for the basics. I will be doing some more videos on, for example, what all these columns actually mean in the tracking system, or some more of the advanced features, but that's just some of the useful basics and some hints and tips which hopefully be quite useful. Thank you.